Imagine for a second that you're viewing a real-time, highly detailed, cinematic map of global trade from space. You'd instantly see the Persian Gulf glowing as one of the world's most vital, yet surprisingly vulnerable, pulsing veins. And right now, that vein is under severe, unprecedented threat. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to completely unpack this highly complex geopolitical crisis. We'll break down the latest data, dive into the historical context, and explore the incredibly stark realities unfolding right now on the water. Let's get right into it.
We have to start with this dramatic condemnation from the UAE, which was issued right after a national ADNO oil tanker was targeted by 2 drones. This specific incident brought regional tensions to an absolute boiling point. And it's a statement that really underscores the sheer gravity of what we're looking at. Notice the use of the word piracy here. This isn't just a localized squabble or a minor dispute. It's being framed as a direct, aggressive threat to global energy security.
To truly grasp the stakes, you have to picture the physical space where all of this is happening. The geographical reality of the Strait of Hormuz is that the physical space for global shipping is violently shrinking. Think of it like a massive, multi-lane global superhighway that has suddenly been barricaded down to a single, highly treacherous dirt path. The designated hazardous red zones directly overlap with the vital traffic separation lanes, meaning these massive ships simply do not have the room to maneuver around these invisible walls.
And the crucial thing to understand is that these aren't just random, isolated incidents. When you break down these recent attacks, a very clear pattern of asymmetric warfare emerges, targeted right at critical maritime and energy infrastructure. We've seen the devastating aftermath from above, plumes of thick black smoke rising from completely gutted oil storage tanks at the Fujairah oil industry zone. What we are witnessing is a sustained campaign utilizing unmanned aircraft and ballistic missiles aimed directly at the heart of the region's energy hubs.
Ultimately, the core conflict comes down to 2 clashing realities. On one side, the international community desperately needs this waterway. To them, it's a critical artery for the fertilizers that grow our food and the energy that powers our cities around the world. But on the other side, regional actors view the strait as the ultimate geopolitical lever. They see it as a global toll booth. It's a territorial pressure point to force economic coercion by simply squeezing the valve shut.
Section 1. Echoes of the Tanker War. History repeating in the Persian Gulf.
You know, to really wrap our heads around the gravity of today's crisis, we actually have to look back, because these exact waters have seen this type of shadow war before. The original tanker war in the 1980s lasted for years and fundamentally reshaped how global militaries protect merchant shipping. It kicked off in 1981 with Iraq attacking ships at the northern end of the Gulf. By '84, the attacks expanded to the Karg Island complex, which triggered a massive 2-way retaliation. It got so intensely dangerous that by 1987, the United States had to launch Operation Earnest Will just to escort reflagged Kuwaiti tankers through the daily crossfire.
Just to put the sheer, devastating scale of that 1980s conflict into perspective, the data proves that absolutely no flag of convenience was safe. The numbers are staggering. Over 283 attacks were initiated by Iraq and 168 by Iran. Liberian flagged ships alone were hit 61 times. We're talking about massive supertankers taking direct hits from missiles and sea mines, resulting in over 30 million tons of cargo completely damaged, and tragically well over 100 sailors losing their lives.
So, the fundamental goal, disrupting trade to inflict intense economic pain, is exactly the same today as it was in the 80s. But the tools, they have become far, far more sophisticated. Instead of relying purely on physical barricades like mines and speedboat swarms, we're seeing the weaponization of the electromagnetic spectrum. It's the maritime equivalent of suddenly having your windshield painted black or you're driving down the highway at midnight. Because of severe GPS interference, vessels are being completely blinded as they try to navigate this incredibly narrow choke point.
Which brings us to Section 2, bypassing the global choke point, the search for alternative routes. Because the strait is increasingly compromised, commercial vessels are now being forced into a very narrow, fixed transit corridor known as the Island Gate. Imagine taking the immense, sprawling traffic of the world's daily oil supply and funneling it entirely through a single, heavily monitored security checkpoint north of Larik Island. The entire maritime situation has consolidated strictly around this tiny geographical sliver. Let's break down exactly what this means, because the Island Gate isn't just a physical route on a map. It has become a financial and political checkpoint, dictating who gets to participate in global trade. Any vessel linked to the US or Israel is currently classified as hostile, making transit effectively impossible for them.
For everyone else, well, if you don't have a direct link to Iran, you could be facing a staggering passage fee of around $2 million just to sail through international waters. It is essentially a geopolitical ransom.
So how do you circumvent a $2 million toll? The UAE developed an absolutely ingenious workaround. They decided to move the oil across the desert to the Gulf of Oman, completely bypassing the perilous strait. Picture a massive cinematic pipeline cutting straight across the sweeping desert sands. This allows crude oil from Abu Dhabi to bypass the choke point entirely, flowing straight to the port of Fujairah, where it can be safely loaded onto ships waiting out in the open, unrestricted waters of the Indian Ocean.
Here's the catch, though. That pipeline can currently only move about 1.5 million barrels a day. That falls drastically short of the 5 million barrels needed daily. Remember, crude oil is heavy. It moves slowly through these massive pipes, maybe 2.5 to 3 kilometers an hour. So while it's a brilliant feat of engineering, it simply doesn't have the sheer volume capacity to replace the massive flow of supertankers that usually traverse the Strait of Hormuz. It's a band-aid, not a cure. And of course, the antagonists know this, which is exactly why we're seeing coordinated drone strikes hitting major oil sites in southern Iraq, including warehouses and the BP-operated North Rumaila field. This is a highly calculated strategy to ensure that there is no easy alternative to the strait. They aren't just attacking the oil itself, they're attacking the very concept of a detour. They are intentionally suffocating any viable backup routes, despite various diplomatic ceasefires being nominally in place.
Section 3. The cost of passage. Calculating the economic fallout. Okay, we really need to look at why this matters to the broader supply chain, and it comes down to a metric called the AWRP, or the Additional War Risk Premium. This single surcharge is quietly paralyzing the shipping industry right now. Think of it like trying to buy car insurance while actively driving through a demolition derby. Insurers don't just back out, they dramatically raise their prices. This premium is calculated as a percentage of the ship's total hull and machinery value, and it is absolutely mandatory if an owner wants to ensure their multi-million-dollar asset isn't a total loss from a stray missile.
To give you an idea of how crazy this has gotten, insurance costs for a simple 7-day transit have absolutely exploded. Before this, you might estimate around $10,000. Now, the baseline for a standard medium-range tanker is quadrupled to $40,000, and depending on the age, the total value, and the specific flag of the vessel, high-end owners are paying well into the six figures, up to $120,000, just for a single week of coverage in the Gulf.
But wait, it gets crazier. In one extreme case, a Suezmax tanker was hit with a $7.5 million premium just to travel through the Gulf. The kicker? That actually exceeded the $6.5 million they were being paid to move the cargo in the first place. Just think about that economic absurdity for a second. The insurance cost to move the oil was $1 million more than the freight fee itself. It literally cost them money to do their job. At that point, the entire business model of international shipping just begins to collapse under its own weight.
And it's not just the financial costs. There are incredibly severe technological hurdles now, too. Ships are operating blind in one of the most dangerous choke points on Earth. To avoid disastrous incidents, authorities in Oman are actually forcing vessels to rely on older physical instruments, like Doppler logs, which physically measure the ship's speed through the water. Why? Because the satellite and GPS signals we all take for granted are being completely scrambled by regional electronic warfare.
Section 4. The International Response, a coalition of concern. So with trade basically gridlocked and insurance costs going astronomical, how is the global community responding? Well, the International Maritime Organization passed an absolutely unprecedented resolution. Over 115 nations co-sponsored a demand for immediate freedom of navigation, strongly condemning the attacks on commercial vessels. This is actually the highest number of co-sponsors in the organization's entire history. The global consensus is absolute here. Using the Strait of Hormuz for economic coercion is unacceptable, a violation of international law, and a direct assault on the global economic order. But the demands allegedly extend far beyond simple maritime blockades. There are major geopolitical pushes reportedly in the works to force future oil trades to be settled in the Chinese yuan in order to lift the siege long term. This is where this localized conflict reveals its true, massive global scale. It's not just about stopping a few ships anymore. It's an orchestrated attempt to permanently shift the financial architecture of the entire global energy trade away from Western systems. So what does the immediate fallout look like today? Essentially, a completely paralyzed supply chain. Right now, there are over 40 massive long-range tankers just idling in the Persian Gulf. They might have the insurance, but management won't let them sail due to the intense safety risks to the crew.
Meanwhile, massive political rifts are forming. You have the UAE distancing itself from OPEC+, and desperate importers are now being forced to source alternate oil from as far away as the US Gulf and West Coast India, all while international naval escorts remain widely unavailable.
I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. As modern warfare completely transforms crucial global arteries into weaponized toll booths, how much longer can our interconnected economy realistically bear the cost? We've walked through the history, we've seen the staggering multi-million-dollar price tags, and we've explored the sheer scale of the disruption. This isn't just an issue isolated to the Persian Gulf. It's an issue that is going to eventually echo through every port, every pipeline, and every single market in the world. Thank you for diving into this explainer with me. Keep asking questions, keep analyzing, and we'll see you next time.